to our Board of Selectmen's meetings. It's Monday, August 25th, just a little after 6 o'clock. It's so nice to see everybody here tonight. This is a little bit different than some of the past meetings we've had over the past the summer. So I'd like to start by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll do some introductions. We have Kelly Bigos, our recording secretary, Tom Wooden, our Russ Hoffman, myself, Denise Griffin, Phil Hamlin, and Wendy Wolf. And I'm not sure who else in the audience. Any other town employees in the audience tonight? Oh, Julia, way in the back. There's people
Julia's
here.
buried in the back.
I couldn't see you. Julia, our financial director for the town. So we'll start off with town manager announcements. Tom.
Thank you. I think I put in your mailbox last week an application from Palmer Payne. He has graciously applied to fill one of the regular positions on the Board of Appeals, and I would ask the board to appoint Palmer to the Appeals Board. And Palmer is here this evening. Are there any questions?
No questions other than thank you, Palmer, because I assume you're still on the budget committee also.
Yeah.
Thank you, Palmer.
I move we appoint Palmer Payne to the Board of Appeals.
I second it.
Okay.
Just at this time, there might be a question that comes up later on. Is this fulfilling an unexpired term or what? Because sometimes we forget about these things in the beginning.
It is. It is.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
Okay, any more discussion? All in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you, I'll do my best.
Thank you.
No, you will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Palmer. Just a couple of FYIs. The rescheduled fireworks from Windjammer Day's 4th of July is this Friday, the 29th, and the start time is 8:30. If we have a rain date, it'll be Sunday the 31st. And the only other thing I just wanted to mention is the new website is up and running as quickly as we could possibly do it. It still has a lot of things to add to it, but if you haven't seen it, I'd suggest take a look at it. It's bluebayharbor.org, just like the last time, and it's nice. It's very easy to use, and I think you'll like this one much better. So that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Tom. Okay, Julia, financials?
We have a total revenue and expense detail printout tonight. Total revenue year to date, $792,767.10. Total expenses, $1,099,354.92. Does anyone have any questions on the revenue or expense sheet? Total accounts payable, $65,223.22. And the bank balance is $1,507,104. And I did get an update today that sometime this week we'll be hearing that Wayne Brewer from Brewer's accounting firm will be coming down to bring us the financial statements, and he'll schedule either the second or the fourth Monday in September to present the audit to you guys.
And have you received the adjusting entries?
I haven't, and that's why you don't have the graph again tonight. I called today to remind him that I need those. He said it's in the typing days right now, so in the next couple of days he'll get them to me.
Okay, great.
And I'll just note for the record that the tax bills did go out early because I know I received mine. So, and they're due.
September 11th.
They're due September 11th? Okay, for the record. But it was less than last year, so that's a great thing.
There you go.
Okay. Wonderful. So we'll move on to our consent agenda, which I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 11th meeting and approve all the public hearings licenses, which includes new victualler license for Mel's Place, Topside Inn, liquor license for Mel's Place, and a catering permit for Andrews Harborside for the bike main event. Unless I hear any questions or objections for those licensees from the audience. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
On the minutes, I think we should append the proclamation that we passed last time so that it's in the records, otherwise I don't think we have a record of it.
Good.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, good catch. Thank you. So, all in favor of the consent agenda with Bill's edits to the minutes? Okay?
Sure.
Great. Done. All right, old business. So first order, or item under old business is discussion of the former tennis court area. Tom had sent out a proposed sketch, because last time we met, we had a proposal from Danielle Betts at Knickerbocker for a fee of over $5,000 for 3 drawings. And since then, I think I forwarded you all an email, because I had had a discussion with her, and she said she would be happy to reduce the price significantly if we only wanted 1 drawing, which was to kind of combine Tom and Jody's sketch with her original sketch that in fact had been approved by the DEP. So that's one. I did not tell her to go ahead with the work because I wanted to have at least a majority, if not 100% consensus, thought about how to proceed here. So that was, what are people's wishes?
Just a point of clarification, I think the sketch was very helpful. I've received some comments from members of the public about trying to highlight on the roadside at least the kind of greenery aspect and having it look nice so that it is not necessarily that you're looking at the basketball court, but really it's the preceding landscaping or greenery or whatever that turns out to be, and that the basketball court is kind of off and behind that. And I just want to make sure I'm conveying the feedback I've had from members of the public that seemed to be a very important element to them, that given it's next to a parking lot, just not to have kind of pavement, that the visualization at least would be something that would be, pleasant and sort of welcoming. And fine, the basketball court can be behind it, but I have no objection to engaging them for a formal design proposal at the reduced rate, so.
So I would agree with that, Wendy. As far as the greenery goes, did Danielle say what that reduced fee would be?
I think I had sent it out in a memo. I didn't bring it with me tonight, but it was about 1/3 of the cost. Or it was,
That's what your memo said.
yeah.
Okay.
So, we have to remember that there are some, that would not necessarily include the DEP filings, but it's a little bit more complicated than just coming up with a
Right.
drawing and implementing it. There are some other logistical.
Right. This would get us a drawing, though.
Right, correct.
With drainage and civil
Yeah.
engineering considerations.
I hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would say that would be a must.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. I agree with you, Wendy, on that. Yeah, I hope the drawings will show, the drainage is the most important thing on that south side.
It's a tough place.
So
as
we
all
got
know.
to make sure we do that correctly there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, great. Well then, it sounds to me like if we're all in,
Comments from the audience?
Yeah, anyone here?
Seeing none?
seeing none, then I think, Tom, you can go ahead and give Danielle a call or an email and ask her to do the work.
Will do.
Yep.
Great, good. Okay, moving on. Old business, the Wharfs and Weirs hearing, which is a continuation of a discussion of the Chimes Association float proposal from several weeks ago or earlier this summer. And I have to say, before we get too far into this, I feel like I need to recuse myself because my husband, Chip, is the attorney for the developer for the association, who I believe is still involved with the group.
Is that correct? Anyone from the group?
Yes, there are many of us here. I'm that person that he's just mentioned. Chip is the lawyer for the association.
So I feel like I need to recuse myself from this. So, because I am privy to a little bit of what happened months or years ago. Not necessarily recently, I will say. I don't know any more than all of you, but I think it would be appropriate to do that. So if I can have your blessing, I'll turn the floor over to JD.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Great. I want the impression of any impropriety.
No.
Okay, everybody. One of the things I'd like to start off with is I want everybody to speak because it's a public hearing. I want to have opportunity, but only 2 minutes. I'll try to keep things down, but I'd like to have people some input from both associations and also abutters. One of the things that I did receive a letter from the attorney from Mr. Yale. I have not had time to read it. So what is the choice of the board here? What is your take on it? Because I have not read this, so you just, Mr. Yale just passed.
Yeah, we've just got it and it's new information, so I guess what I personally would like is at some point in the process for Mr. Yale to just summarize what he thinks the major points are.
Okay.
And then we can go from there. But perhaps maybe a introduction summary from Joe, who's the designer, Joe LeBlanc, who's the designer, to get us started.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a mic I should be using?
There are 4 or 5 on the table. They can hear you.
I'm Joe LeBlanc. LeBlanc Associates is the permits agent for Chimes Association. What is being proposed is the addition of 2 10-by-30 floats. This is a common dock shared by 5 members of the association. Originally, the proposal was to have the, sorry we don't have pictures for everybody, I think a member of you, or many of you have seen it. The original float is there, 10-by-30. We were then going to have a 10-by-30 this way and a 10-by-30 this way to avoid all the docks that line this property here. We had a prior Wars and Weirs hearing, I think in June, and the decision was including input from the harbor master, as well as Chimes Association and abutters, particularly one that had I think Tom had a mooring out here. It was agreed at that meeting to rotate that float back so that the 2 line up, 10-by-30 and 10-by-30. And that moved us even further away from here. And combined with that, there would be 2 floats out, 2 moorings out here that would be moved approximately 15 feet out from this common dock. And that was agreed to by the owners of those 2 floats, 2 moorings, I should say, as well as the harbor master. And also, subsequent to that, there was a selectmen's meeting. I did not attend. I didn't realize they were 6 o'clock. So, but other people did, and the selectmen approved it at that time. However, the code officer has decided to have another Wars and Weirs hearing, which we just had the other day, followed again by another selectmen's meeting. So that's the decision of the selectmen, of course. So the bottom line is there's 2 10-by-30 floats being proposed. They're at a right angle to the the existing common float, and basically that's what is being proposed. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I'm just curious in the design of the expanded float, has the association and the property owner, have you all sat down and talked together about reaching sort of a mutually satisfying design, or how many times has that happened? I'm just curious, because this has gone back and forth.
Well, I'm not sure, I know what you mean by property owners. There's 5 or 6 owners in the Chime Association.
Well, I would say the Chimes, and I would imagine the Yales, since they're
The Ebtide?
major,
Ebtide.
Epitide,
Ebtide,
Okay,
right.
sorry. Yes.
Yeah. I think the discussion has actually been filtered through the code officer, because although, let's see, president of the prior president association, who owned that property previously, when he sold the property, clearly stated in the deed the presence of this existing common dock, okay? And also reserved the rights to maintain, repair, replace, blah, 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 all the things you do that allow you to keep your product up. In this case, so there's no big secret by Ebtide and or the Yales that this dock existed. And furthermore, that an entire marina, a whole plethora of moored boats are out in front of their property. I mean, that was no secret when the property was purchased. So we got any discussion. I didn't have any discussions with the Ebtide parties. I think they, my understanding is they did complain to the code officer. I can't recall if I saw anything in writing. I think I did not from them. I understand they did verbalize their complaints, but I never saw anything in writing, so we did not respond.
Well, maybe perhaps when there are others that speak, they can answer the question about
Yeah.
neighbor to neighbor.
Go ahead. Could you state your name?
Yes. My name is Rick Taylor. I am the developer of the Chimes Association, no longer a property owner, and I am the project manager for this because it started quite a while ago. I agreed to continue project managing this dock plan to fruition. And the answer specifically to your question is, when the first design came out, Tom called me, and Tom Yale called me, and we got together at our house over in Bars Island. And at that time, Tom felt that the initial design was one he could live with. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's my recollection of what we talked about. Then the design changed at the first Wharves and Weirs hearing, as Joe described, and we haven't sat down and talked about it since then. So that's the answer to your, I think that answers your question.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that.
Can we see that sketch?
Oh, you may.
This isn't big enough to see what's going on.
We can make some.
Okay, anybody else in the audience, please, is Mr. and Mrs. Whittle in here?
There's,
Yeah. Do you want to, you can speak.
Yeah, I submitted a letter for
Yes, you did.
comment prior to the
We have
last hearing. And my concerns are addressed in that letter, that I'm happy to mention. But I think one of the issues that I have is the regulations talk about what's required for the dock. And it seems the important thing to me is that it says that the dock should be consistent with the character and uses in the area. And to me, a dock that has 620 or 5 26-foot boats on it is not consistent with uses in the area, and I'm concerned of the precedent that could be set here and what might happen to the waterfront of Newport Harbor, not just the gut, but everywhere, if we start building structures like this.
Thank you.
To me, consistent with the area is a ramp and a float. I mean, that's what residential docks are.
Thank you very much.
May I comment on that? May I comment on that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, The DEP really set that standard. They actually drafted the shoreline zoning, which has become the part of basically every town's shoreline zoning ordinance. And in fact, when they make changes, thank you very much, Tom.
Yeah.
Does anybody else want a copy of the plan?
Yeah, I've got one.
Anyone else? Yeah. Bill, you got one?
I got one.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so, anyway, the DEP drafted those originally. They were adopted by the town of Boothbay Harbor, as they have been with all towns. And the whole idea is consistent with basically things in the area is there's other docks. In fact, we make a point when we submit our applications. I prepare the DEP application, the Corps of Engineer application, in this case, the town of Boothbay Harbor application. And the DEP in particular is interested in, are there other docks around the area? And if they are, they consider that representative of a use consistent with what's being proposed as it was in this application. They don't all look alike. They don't, and probably half the docks lining the shore on the left side of this proposed structure are different because the owners are different. The boat sizes are different. The requirements are different. The depth of the water is different. So it's all a factor of the particular location. And side by side, you might have a pier that's 30 feet long, and another one's 100 feet long, because one party has ledge basically going out, and the party next to it has deep water right off the shore. So things vary from location to location, as they did here, when this original dock was built, and our this particular addition of floats really is to meet the needs of a common use dock. Generally, the DEP, as is the Corps and as most towns are, would prefer to have common docks. They prefer to have 5 people using a dock rather than 3 docks. Okay, so which is pretty much what's been done here, and we're basically meeting the needs of people that are changing. There's new houses being built in each town's association, and boat lengths vary. And there's no ordinance on boat lengths. Why? Because people change their boats. They change this. Some go up in size, some go down in size, and so that's a variable that is not within anybody's permit. Okay. Now, as far as this particular structure, one of the considerations we did is we looked at, if we added these 2 floats, what is the distance between this and the ebb tide existing dock, which existed when ebb tide bought the property. And it's 159 feet. The Corps is looking for 50 feet between floats. They consider that a reasonable turning distance for parties between one dock and another. And here we have basically 3 times the size of that, 3 times that length. So there's plenty of room for maneuverability by ebb tide to come in and leave their dock or approach their dock. And that was taken into consideration when we reoriented the second float.
I have a question. One of the questions I have is, when I looked over that piece of property and what got, the association, right, had the right of way of pedestrian walkway, right?
They
Down
do.
to that dock, am I
They do.
correct?
They do.
They don't own the dock.
The association does own the dock.
It does own the dock.
They don't, yeah. In fact, it was very clear,
What does Mr. Yale own?
he owns his dock. It's a unique situation in that a right-of-way exists across the ebb tide property. It's not unusual. We permitted these before where the owner of the property will have a dock. In this case, they were all in there, but when the ebb tides bought their property, and a right-of-way, maybe from someone across the street, has a right to pass and also build a dock, and we permit them. We can get them permitted under the state and federal laws. Yeah.
Can you say again what your role is in this?
I do the permitting work. If someone hires me as a consultant, and I start from the beginning. I look at what they're proposing. I come up with a design. In this case, we went through a couple iterations before we came up with the first one.
Yep.
And then that's approved by the association, and upon their approval, we'll then proceed. I'll do this work. LeBlanc Associates being I. It will prepare and apply for the federal permit with the Corps of Engineers, the state permit with the DEP, and in this case also with submerged lands, and also the municipality, in this case the town of Boothbay Harbor. So we prepare those applications. We follow them through, we attend the meetings, we represent them at the meetings, and we respond to any questions from any agencies, all on behalf of the original,
So you're doing all that on behalf of the Chimes
that's correct.
Association?
That's correct.
Okay.
And we've done probably 700 of these in the state of
Yeah.
Maine.
Thanks.
And one other clarifying question. I had asked about the mooring balls that are off of where the current dock is now, and you seem to indicate the mooring balls were going to be moved?
They're gonna
Is
be
that
moved.
correct? Are they
Yeah.
going to be removed or moved?
Moved out, basically moved out 10 feet, 15 feet, plus or
Okay.
minus.
And I was concerned because whenever you move a mooring ball,
Right,
there's another mooring ball right
yeah.
behind it, and that does have implications for the people that own the mooring balls right behind it, because it's moving 10 feet closer, and those things are fairly closely spaced. I actually was hoping the harbor master might be around so we can ask that question, because there have been issues of boats overlapping in the gut area because of the density of the mooring balls, and when you move a set of mooring balls, that impacts
Sure.
other people beside ebb tide, including, I think, the nuts and the others that have moorings in that area.
That question was asked at the prior Wars and Weirs hearing, and the harbor master was part of that decision, and he agreed looking at it, along with Joe Blake, who basically positions 90% of those moorings out there, and has for years. But the harbor master agreed, Joe agreed that that was a reasonable thing to do. So I think that was clearly understood, that those two would not affect any moorings beyond those two. Just moving them up.
I think I can corroborate that. I was at that first meeting, and the harbor master was there, along with, as he says, Joe Blake, who set the moorings. And
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say the consensus of the harbor master and of Joe Blake that resetting those moorings to provide adequate room was not a big deal and could be done.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, do you have any more questions?
Or any
Probably.
comments out in the audience?
How about you?
I'd like to, if I could, ask Mr. Yale to sort of, we just got this, as you know, 10 minutes ago. Could you perhaps do a brief summary of what you think your major points are in here?
Well, I can certainly try to do that, but I would urge the board to read it in its entirety, for sure.
Obviously.
Because I'm probably going to miss points that are in it. Mr. Levine was a little longer than 2 minutes. I would hope I would get a little more.
You will.
Than 2 minutes if you want me to address this.
Please.
All right. Deborah and I very much object to what's being proposed, and we assert that the Chimes Association lacks sufficient right, title, and interest to expand their dock. The subdivision is shown and depicted in its entirety on the plan entitled Composite Plan of the Chimes. The relevant portion of that plan is it's on Lot 1. The ebb-tide deed includes, on page 149, all rights, title, and interest to the shores, rocks, flats, to low water, southerly of and continuous to the above-described parcel, the easterly riparian boundary being south 8 degrees west along Lot 2, to the low water mark of Townsend Gut, so-called. The only rights reserved by the Taylors in their deed to ebb tide as relates to the pending application are the rights of access to the pedestrian easement on Lot 1 and the right to the common dock as depicted on the plan. Those are the words in the deed. In other words, the only dock the Taylors reserve the right to use, own, install, maintain, and repair is the dock, pier and float, in the location as specifically depicted on that plan. They reserve no right to expand the common pier or the float beyond the location and dimensions as specifically shown on the plan. Just as the lot owner who buys a lot on the plan can't change the lot boundaries without the consent of the abutters, the owner of the pier and float have no right to expand that dock beyond the location shown on the plan without the approval of Deborah and myself, owners of the Ebb Tide LLC. And the upland land, the association dock. The association acquired their right, title, and interest to the common pier and the float by virtue of a deed given by Dick and Joan Taylor, dated May 16, incidentally, 2014, recorded, etc. They conveyed to the Chimes Association only those rights that they reserved in and to the ramp, pier, and float. The specific conveyance is a fee ownership in the common dock, including the ramp, pier, and float, as located on Lot 1, and as depicted on the survey composite plan of the Chimes and dated March 20th, 2007, as prepared by McConnell Associates. Again, the Chimes Association only acquired the fee interest in the specific common pier and float, as shown on the recorded plan. The Chimes Association acquired no other rights to expand the common dock and float. The association may maintain, repair, replace the common pier and float, but has no right under its deed to expand the common pier and float. Because the Chimes Association does not own the land area adjacent to the common dock, they have no other independent rights to expand the common dock beyond those specifically included in their deeds and as shown on the plan. Accordingly, without that sufficient right, title, and interest, the town of Booth Bay Harbor doesn't really have the authority to act on the application as submitted by them. There are other issues which I want you to go on and read in here with respect to. Deborah and I looked for over 2.5 years for a piece of property that met a whole bunch of criteria. Happily, it was here in Booth Bay Harbor and right underneath our nose the whole time. Those criteria happened to be, certainly view was part of it, access to deep water, a current, and I can get into why we were concerned about having a sufficient current, but also an area that was certainly as protected, which Townsend got is. It's a regular hurricane from the standpoint of storm protection. The reason for some of those criteria was my interest in aquaculture. You'll see attached to this letter are 3 comments from people, one of whom is Chip Davidson, who is the former owner of Great Eastern Mussel. I've known Chip for over 20 years. I've had many discussions with him concerning aquaculture and techniques. I've also had conversations with another gentleman who supplied an affidavit on the back of that, of David Whiston, who has an active oyster farming operation on Chebeague Island. We supplied specialty ropes and worked together on that particular project. It's in a cove, in Chandler's Cove on Chebeague Island. He has some 15,000 oysters under cultivation in special cages that can roll. The issue there, however, is that it lacks current flow, and there's issues relative to seeding. In the case of mussels, I consulted with Chip on that, and the current flow, which is at times as much as 4 knots, right through the dock and around in that cove, is absolutely ideal for mussel seeding. We produce a very specialized piece of line. It's called, well, it's fared line, and it was originally developed for anti-submarine warfare applications, so that hydrophone array cables wouldn't strum and make noise. But it may also be extremely ideal for trapping mussel seeds in the current flow. And it is my plan to do that right in my own front yard, basically, to experiment with various types of those ropes to be able to advance perhaps the seeding, trapping ability of these ropes, and also the yield for cultivating rope mussels. If this dock were allowed to go forward, it would encroach on that area relative to where we want to do these experiments.
Okay, but that's state land you're talking about. You own down to the low water. state
That is correct.
beyond that.
That's correct.
So, and I would summarize your basic argument is that they don't have the legal right to expand because of the plot plan and your ownership.
It's also relative to damage to ourselves.
Okay.
That also is outlined in here in
Okay.
terms of
Okay.
what we paid
Yeah.
for and what our expectations were and what was represented by the seller.
Okay.
Okay.
I would,
But I urge you to read this. Certainly.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of information.
But I would tend to parse this issue into two pieces. The town, if I look at the town codes and what the town is supposed to look at in terms of permitting docks, piers, wharves, bridges, and other structures, there are a number of items, but the one that really stands out as being applicable to this is the facility shall be no larger in dimension than necessary to carry on the activity and be consistent with the surrounding character. That's the phrase that I think really applies to the town. I think you have taken a position that they don't have a legal right to do this, and I would assume the Chimes Association has a differing opinion on that. And I would parse that as really a civil issue between you and the Chimes, and I don't believe it is the town's position to resolve that. I believe our charter is to determine whether the dock is permissible under our bylaws or not. Now, whether it is legal for them to build it or not, as I say, I would argue is a civil issue that needs to be settled between the two of you. And I would recommend that we go ahead and judge the merits of the dock with the constraint that it be established that is legal for the Chimes Association to proceed.
What sort of issues would you face if property owners decided to extend docks in front of other adjacent pieces of property?
They would come to these same issues.
Yeah, they would.
Really?
So, go ahead, Link, I'll wait
Go
till
ahead.
public comments.
I kind of get what you're saying, but if I wanted to build a barn on my neighbor's property, you wouldn't give me a permit for it, would you?
If you had an easement that said you were allowed to have a barn, we might, but we would put the constraint on it that it be determined that you legally had the right to do that.
Okay, right,
So that's all I'm saying.
right, fair enough.
You know, what our choices here is the town could try and decide the legal issue, and I don't want to go there. It's not for us to do, it's not our expense. If there's legal action to be carried forth, I think they should do that and resolve it.
Yeah.
So we could agree to do nothing.
So it's the easement issue that,
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah,
that does make
yeah.
a
fair enough.
Yeah.
Does make a difference.
And so, you know, we could decide to do nothing and let that hash out, and then they would come back to us, and either it would fall off the table, or we would be back here again. And I'm simply suggesting that we could maybe save some time by making the determination on the float, subject to there being established a proper legal right to build this dock.
Makes sense.
And then that gets it off our table and gets it back in your
So
lap.
Bill, you have other obligations in terms of Title 38, 1022 as well. In terms of if an issue of causing harm, however you define that, whether it's...
And I would say that falls back into, is this within the character of the area?
I mean, we certainly didn't buy our piece of property with the expectation, I mean, we cited our house and everything else with respect to not being able to see the association dock, or even our own dock, from our living room, or even from our front patio, for that matter. We can see our dock from our second floor, but we still can't see the association dock because of foliage that's there, but also because of the way we cited our dock. That would now go away. And if you assert that that's no injury to us, well, then I guess I have no argument against you, but
No,
I would assert that it does.
I understand that, and I take that, and I believe that falls under the structure of, as I said, under the is it consistent with the area, and is it the minimum necessary to carry on? Now, it may be that it's not in the character of the area because of the points you say. It may be that we determine that it is within, consistent with any area.
So let me share, since frankly, here's some pictures of what are in the area for association docks. Because I think the question about easements and being able to build docks and then modify them is not an insignificant one. And on the back here is a map of the area. The proposed dock is where this, oh, I'm sorry. The proposed dock is where this little blue area is in the cove. And the pictures that are on the front are the association docks for Juniper Point Association, which first of all has a lot more houses and people than Chimes. And the character of these association docks are depicted in the pictures on the front, that they have a single dock structure. It is bigger than normal. I didn't go down there with my measuring stick and measure it, but it is a much larger single dock. It's there to have dinghies for the association. There are actual rules, and I'm not a member of the Juniper Point Association, says that members may use the floats to tie up small boats. They cannot moor a boat for longer than 20 minutes at the dock because there are moorings available. And these are the two most proximate association docks in the neighborhood. Now, Bill had mentioned at the site there was a dock in Hodgson Cove, and I went out in my boat just to look. And there is a picture of a very unusual dock in Hodgson Cove that's on the back, but if you look in the lower picture, I don't even know if this is an association dock or what this is.
It's an individual dock.
And the nearest other dock is off the picture over
Yeah.
here. So it's very, very distant from any kind of a butter. And so when we talk about the character and nature of what is there, and frankly, I don't care that this is Chimes or Tom or anything. What I'm talking about is we have a number of association docks. This design as depicted would be unusual compared to the association docks that are in the area. And for me, a variance or an approval is something I should have a pretty extraordinary need to make an exception for. So I asked the question about conversations between neighbors because I don't think anybody, first of all, wants to have contention or anger between neighbors. I think most of us would hope that neighbors could work together and figure out a compromise that would be acceptable to both parties without having to go to legal remedies, which if I read the wharves and navigation statutes, that if I think ebb tide is aggrieved by the decision of municipal officers, that this can go all the way to the Superior Court. So, I mean, there will be further legal action, but I would hope in a town of our size that we wouldn't have to have neighbor suing neighbor when perhaps there could be common sense to prevail to meet the needs of both parties, without having people so aggrieved. I just think it's important to put that in context.
Thank you. Any more comments from the audience?
Can I,
Sure.
can somebody, maybe Mr. LeBlanc, talk a little bit about the need for the extended length?
Sure. Again, the dock, the float addition is really sized around the various sizes of boats. And in this case, Chimes members that have more than one boat. So, and the fact that in reality, people tend to go use their boats around the same time. The weather's nice. Everybody shows up at noon or 12:30 to go out and use their boat. They come back pretty much at the same time. It's just the way things are. at least every place I've been in Maine, so that it was to relieve situations where there was limited docking space when people were going out with boats of different sizes, whether they're 22 feet or 30 feet or whatever they are. So that was the purpose, is to provide additional capacity for
landing and
Giant
picking up
members, yeah.
passengers and so on.
Yeah.
Are there moorings available for
The- the-
those boats?
There are moorings, and I think, as you probably saw, well, if you were down,
I was not.
Well, it wasn't right. I'm not saying this is why it is the case, but I would say almost every dock along the left shore, people tend to keep their boats on the floats. It's just the way things are. I think probably, for the reason Tom mentioned, it has to be a quiet area, so where many places I recommend people put their boats on moorings. Here is a quiet area, and so the boats do quite well up against the floats. So it's just the way things are in that particular cove. Like, it isn't the case in every place in Maine, but certainly is the case here.
So there is the opportunity, though, to have your mooring and, as, say, these other pictures depict, have your dinghy or whatever, or your rowboat, and keep that
Yeah.
on the dock and get out to your boat.
Well, yes, and another reason people tend to put boats on floats is because we're all getting older. And someone 65, 70 years old, getting in a dinghy and getting out, it just doesn't work like it did when you were 40 or 35. So the reality is,
I thought that's part of the ethos of Maine, we got all young and.
it isn't until you fall.
Yeah.
Or tip over in the boat. So, I mean, basically, that's the situation. You got an aging population. And so, if your boat run out here, you step right onto your boat. You don't have to deal with the dinghy interface.
Yeah, just
Just a minute, so, she's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's
My name is Deborah Yale, I'm an owner of Eptide
Sure.
LLC, and this is the first time I've met Mr. LeBlanc. Prior to that, all I received was a certified letter from him in regards to the plan of the neighborly discussion on the float. My office happens to be on the front side of the house, so I see how often the dock gets used. And the Chimes Association does not use that float hardly at all. Even today, this most gorgeous day of the summer, no one took their boat out. There's one boat on the float right now, and they occasionally use it. Maybe they go out once a week. Some other members of the association, they come by, they have friends come by and pick them up, and they go down on the float and get picked up. Summers prior to this, they've all had their boats on the mooring. I've never seen any problem. They come in, they dinghy in and back. So I don't understand your discussion saying that the reason that they need a bigger float is because they're using it all at the same time, when they do not use it all at the same time.
I might point out there are no bolts on the moorings, with the exception of Mr. Taylor's early on this year. All the other mooring bolts out there have been empty, stirring up the bottom all summer.
So as Joe mentioned, the goal of the association, when we first asked Joe to give us a design, is to have basically the same thing that many people that we've been talking about here tonight have. That is their own float and therefore their boat on their own float. He did mention that as we get older, I mean, I just went cruising down east for 2 weeks, and whenever I got out of my dinghy, I had to crawl on my hands and knees until I got onto the dock where I could stand up. So it's not the best way to go when you're 72 years old like I am, and like Dexter is, and so on. So we're getting older. We felt that this was, and as Joe says, this is what the Corps of Engineers is looking for. This is the most efficient way to get 5 families to have their boats on a dock. And so that's what we were, that's I think the answer to your question. That's why we asked Joe to create this design for us.
I tend to agree with Bill that, if I could just add on a civil matter, the thing you brought up before, we also got an opinion from the attorney for Chimes Association, and basically said you have a right to do exactly what you're doing. And I'll reinforce that by saying before the Submerged Lands Bureau issued its submerged land lease, they had it reviewed, both the deed and the attorney's letter from Chimes Association, reviewed by the Attorney General. So, and then they issued the lease. So I think that there's some precedent for,
So you already have the submerged land leases?
we do.
Okay.
Yep.
Like Wendy, I also tried to look around the area to see what was in keeping with the area, to see what was already there, and what's closest to me is Hodgson's Cove. And I looked at the 5 docks that were actually none of the one that you looked at. The one that you looked at is a privately owned dock, it's a working lobsterman's dock.
Oh,
It's
this long thing?
that long
yeah,
one, it's
yeah.
probably 120 feet long, and I would wager it wouldn't be permitted in today's environment, but it's been there for a long time. And that's one individual owner with about 100 and, as I say, 100 plus feet of dock
And
space.
they actually have very long ledge that.
Yeah, that's
goes on
part of it
so.
is to get to good water. But there are 5 docks that are stuck up in the corner that are about 50 feet apart, 75 feet apart, no more than that. They're really quite tight. 4 of them are individual owners, 1 is an association dock. The individual owner docks have 90 feet, 80 feet, 80 feet, and 40 feet. So an average of about 72 feet per owner of linear dock space, two-sided linear dock space. The association dock that's there is about 60 feet long and has 4 members, so they average about 15 feet per owner. And I do believe that's one reason why we should be encouraging association docks rather than individual docks. But anyway, so the Chimes is suggesting 90 feet for 4 or 5 owners, depending upon how you count the lots. So that works out to somewhere between 18 and 25 feet per owner, which is consistent with the area, at least consistent with this other part of Hodgson Cove Road, and in fact is more efficient in terms of dock spaces for Hodgson Cove Road, for Townsend Gut. So that's the data I looked at. Early on, there was an argument put forth that perhaps it was to provide each owner with space to have his dock tied up. I don't consider that a valid argument. There's no reason for that, as you pointed out.
Yeah.
But I also consider this amount of dock space to be appropriate for 4 or 5 owners, based upon what I've seen in the area. And that there's, in fact, there's an individual owned dock in Hodgson Cove that is exactly this configuration. It's an L configuration, it's 2 30-foot floats teed onto a 10 by 30-foot float.
I guess, Bill, one of the other things, though, that I would ask is, hearings are places where we set precedent. So knowing that there are a number of associations, I would think carefully about what will we say to the other associations that might come back and say, well, we have moorings here, we'd really like to extend our docks. I think there is some concern. I think Tom Whittle mentioned that in terms of altering sort of the character and nature, and
You raise a good point. Our codes, which are what we have to go by now, don't speak to association docks in any way, shape, or form. They
Right.
simply say, does the dock conform consistent to the area? So that's maybe some issue we want to look at in the future about putting in some wording that would in fact encourage appropriately sized association docks. But the current codes don't speak to it.
Okay, everybody had a chance to speak, any more want to speak on this? Okay, what's the decision here? What do we?
Well, my opinion, my personal opinion is either we could table it while the parties talk to one another and sort this out legally, or we could rule on the float as been presented here with the constraint that the legal issues get resolved.
is there any rush that we have to make a decision pending, resolution of the legal action? I mean, we're towards the end of season, and,
Is there any, where's Mr. LeBlanc? Is there any rush on this?
Well, I think that, just like anything else, I mean, we've been in this permit process for 6 months. And I think we'd like a decision because, just to wrap it up, I think, if you chose to, I guess, given the 2 options the bill described, I'd certainly like to see it approved. And then you can make it subject to any legal remedy, action, civil action in this case, between the parties if there is any.
Excuse me, I'm probably speaking out of turn. I'm a member of the Chimes Association, sympathize with your arguments.
And your
I
name
think
for
you
the
should
record.
read those.
Can you state your name for us?
State your name,
Oh,
sorry.
Dexter Morrison.
Thank you.
And I beg your pardon. And I think you should read that submission in its entirety before we can understand the implications of it. Okay? I mean, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it.
Yes, and I would agree with that.
I do too.
I'm comfortable making a decision pending
Very
anything when I
uncomfortable.
haven't had a chance to fully
fair
read the
point.
documents.
Yeah, I think we should table it. We should read it. We gotta read this stuff, make sure we're clear on what things are going to. I move to table it.
And I will second that pending a thorough review of all the documentation.
Yeah, so we got a second, do we? Second. Yep. Then we gonna, we vote. We vote. We vote. So,
Why don't I give you a copy of the opinion provided by Chimes if you're going to be reviewing legal stuff.
Sure,
the
okay.
plan.
Sure, that would be great.
Absolutely.
It's a little shorter.
Sorry.
I think it's more to the point.
Thank you very much.
What's going to be the event that takes this off the table?
Oh, yeah.
Right, when does this come back to us again?
Yeah.
What's our next step? So do we pick it up again in 2 weeks? And after we've had a chance to read it?
Yeah, I think that gives us time to review the
Okay.
written material.
I think so too.
Okay. So we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting?
Next meeting will be on the agenda, so we get a chance to read this. Thank you very much, everybody.
We're ready. We're ready. What's next? New business.
No, I don't. No, but I wasn't legal.
Other things to do.
Can we get back to the agenda here?
Are there extra copies?
Okay, I think we're ready to move on with our agenda. And what I'd like to do is move right into 7C, which is the Rock Tide and Lobster Wharf outdoor music discussion. And we can discuss the bids afterwards. And that's because certain people are here. And I know Chief Hosh is here. And I think he has some other obligations tonight. So, okay. So the selectmen have received, or actually the town has, Mike, would you mind shutting the door there because I think there's a different conversation going on in the hall, which is fine, but,
Well, we are talking about noise.
yeah, I want to be able to hear everybody's comments.
As long as it doesn't get to be a fist fight, you'll be all set.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the town has received a number of complaints with regards to outdoor music this summer. And our hope tonight was that we could discuss these in a neighborly and amicable way, as Wendy was talking about before, in order to rectify the situation in accordance with our town ordinance. So I guess for starters, what I'd like to say is we're really, before we kind of get into the discussion is, while we might want to talk about changes to the code, that's not the purpose of the discussion tonight. So if you're here for that reason, I would ask that you hold your comments to a later point in time. So what I'd like to know is there anybody here representing the Rock Tide or the Lobster Wharf?
Rock Tide,
And you are?
John Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan. Okay.
Jeff Simmons, Food Bay Lobster Wharf.
Okay. Thank you. So just,
I'm Jim Perkins. I abut the Rock Tide on the south.
okay, thank you. And you're a resident?
Yes.
Thank you. So it's my understanding that the town, specifically via the police department, that we've received numerous complaints via 911 this summer relating to outdoor music. Now, just to be clear, with regards to the Lobster Wharf, I think it was a one-time situation and the situation was resolved.
It was a wedding reception and we allowed it to play just a little bit longer.
Okay. The other situations have to do with, Mr. Sullivan, have to do with at least a dozen phone calls or complaints with regards to the Sunday afternoon music at the Rock Tide. And what and it's my understanding, and maybe Chief Hosh can corroborate this, but on multiple occasions, a member of his team has shown up at the inn sometime during Sunday afternoon to respond to those calls. Is that correct, Chief?
That is correct.
I can corroborate that as well.
Excuse me, Mr. Perkins?
I can corroborate that as well. It's been there. Each time I've called and complained, they sent an officer over to observe it. He and I conversed, he left.
Now, once during a performance, did a police officer approach me as a representative of Rock Tide or anyone else at Rock Tide that I know of? No one's ever come forward. I did have a police officer come the day after a show and talk to me, but never during the show did a police officer ever come and talk to me about anything.
Okay, well, I
Feel that, it was it, but it was the day after, right?
It was.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
Okay, well, you know, I'm not sure that, I appreciate the comment. I'm not so sure how important that is. I think, I want to make sure that you are clear about what the code says. Okay, and the code says amplified music is limited to 80 decibels, which is similar to a garbage disposal, dishwasher, average factory freight train. And it's my understanding, in fact, that OSHA says that extended listening to 85 decibels or more can cause hearing loss, just as an aside. So, given that if you weren't familiar with the codes before and now that you've heard them, you know, can you, and given the fact that many residents on the east side on Atlantic Avenue have called to complain, and if they haven't called to complain, I know they've talked to one of the members of the Board of Selectmen. And I know that personally, a taxpayer resident on downtown, who lives closer to the tugboat, personally called me to complain because they could hear on that side of the harbor as well. So I think that, I know for myself, we want to be a business-friendly town, and would people agree with that here?
Yes.
I
So-
don't think anybody disagrees.
And I love music. So I'd like to see whether there's a way that we could have the music meet the codes, or have you,
Do we know that
consider-
the music has not met the code? Do we know that?
it's pretty darn loud.
But has anybody come forward with a decibel meter and said this is more than 80?
I don't have that data.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
have that data.
well, you know, and just, not so much off the subject, but I did work at Fisherman's Wharf for a number of years, and we put in a zillion complaints at Fisherman's Wharf about the music at night, you know, until 1:30 in the evening, and yet music still plays, as we know, virtually every night of the week. Complaints have been made about music in the downtown region before, and yet music is still played. So we do play music on Sunday afternoon, between 1 and 4. We had a band out there. We also played music between 4 and 6 every afternoon besides Sunday. That was a steel drum between 4 and 6, and then a band between 1 and 4. I have met with Jim. This year we had a single band play every Sunday. They tended to be a classic rock band. It's, as I told Jim, it wasn't our intention to do that going forward next year, that we would probably have different types of music. But I don't know if it's the type of music or if it's just the fact that it is music and he can hear it.
It's loud.
But
It's loud and it's tough to love.
Yeah, but it's, you know, we are a business. I think you can see how, I mean, just 2 days ago, I was at Chapel Street and I could hear bagpipes, just beautiful bagpipes, because there was a great celebration going on in the Commons. I know the downtown park, the Whale Park, features live entertainment. I know that the town band plays on the library lawn during the day, and people can hear that. So we're just another entity in town, and we are a business, and the reason we do it is not to disrupt the neighborhood, but we do it to give our guests and people in town something to do on a Sunday afternoon. So it's not that we want to be bad neighbors. I talked to the band about, you know, keeping it down. You know, certain sounds travel different. You know, deep sounds that come out of a subwoofer are omnidirectional. The speakers, we have our speakers pointed across the harbor, not towards Jim's property, where they, you know, it goes the opposite direction. So, you know, we're trying to be good neighbors, but we also, you know, are trying to keep a business, you know, active and of interest to our patrons. You know, people come and enjoy it. If you did come on a Sunday afternoon, you might see 50 or 60 people, you know, enjoying themselves. And it's certainly not a young crowd there. I'd say the average age of the people is probably 50 that are there.
Pretty young.
Calling that old.
No, for me too, but it's certainly not a, you know, a 25-year-old event, you know, where they're trying to get young people screaming for louder music. The band we do have, the feature of the band is the girl sings, but you also hula hoops at the same time. That's the real feature of this particular band. They're not a heavy metal band.
But it's amplified.
It's definitely amplified.
Yeah. I see some other hands up in the back of the room.
I think the...
Could you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Mike Mayhew. I run an engineering business up on the hill. I certainly enjoy the music in town, but I think what the code says is 80 decibels, and that's our magnitude's a factor of 10. And, you know, the difference between 60 and 80 is huge. So the question is, has anyone measured the sound? And I think the rock tide is faced across the harbor, and water, sound bounces off of water, attenuates very well. But I don't believe it's, my guess is I don't hear him in the afternoon, and I'm located fairly closely. But I certainly, just because there's a complaint doesn't mean it's 80 decibels, and I think that's the issue. I mean, is he in violation? I don't think he is.
Okay. Frank?
Frank Bassett, Blue Bear. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, Denise, but does it state any hours of this?
Yes,
Or is it,
it does.
the implement is
Yes.
any time has to be under 80?
Hours of operation, amplified entertainment unless otherwise noted all amplified entertainment shall not commence before 9 AM and must discontinue by 9 PM.
Okay. Okay, so this is all a moot point if it's 80 or under 80. Because they're running a business in a town where the law says, the ordinance says it has to be under 80. We've got residents here and we abide by the ordinance. So it would seem to me that not much discussion can take place until that is measured. And does it even say how close or far, the method of measurement, but it has to be ascertained whether they're over 80. And if they're over 80, they gotta quiet down. And if they're under 80, then we all have to live with it, whether we like it or not. And then my question is, who's that burden on? Who's that burden of measurement on? There's gotta be some way that we can measure this. And we can talk until we're blue in the face. You know, Mike doesn't think it's too loud, but this gentleman does, and I might think it is, and he might not. I mean, we can talk about it forever. But if the law says 80, it seems to be pretty simple that we have to ascertain that fact before really anything else can go on.
Okay, thank you.
Can I
Chief
speak
Hodge?
for just a minute?
Oh.
I wish that it were that simple. Also, under that same ordinance, the municipal officers or law enforcement officers shall have the authority to reduce the allowable noise level based on, but not limited to, special conditions relating to the neighborhood character, unanticipated effect on an abutter or the neighborhood, site location, such as on a hill, in a valley, or over the water, or the date and time of event. And I think this is a fairly unique location, and the statute also says that it's measured at the lot lines. That's a problem when you're out over the water.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a unique situation. And, I mean, you're absolutely right in the sense that there is a touchstone here, but I think the purpose of this meeting is to recognize that there is a problem, whatever the level is,
Right.
whether it is within the legal limits or above the legal limits, there is a problem because of the number of complaints we're seeing. And is there a common solution that we can reach without having to go to expensive measurements and legal action and et cetera? That's where I'm coming from.
Okay, Chief Hodge?
I'm sorry, Bill just stole my thunder.
Oh,
Sorry. There is also a, if you look under 74.9 281, that 80 decibels from 9 to 6 p.m. and 70 decibels at the property line between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. Yeah, it's lower over after 6 or something.
I'd like to go around the room first before people have a second time at speaking. Mr. Pierce?
Thank you. We live in the oldest town in the country. Regardless of a decibel meter, it's disturbing the peace. And I think it's basically what's been going on Sundays with the heavy drummers. Most people don't realize, perhaps the engineer does, sound travels 7 to 10 times further across still water than across land. It's also amplified by as much as a third when the water temperature and the air temperature is different by 15 degrees, which it often is here. A fiberglass boat is a hollow, solid piece of equipment. Down inside the boat on Sunday afternoons, it reverberates. We've had several people leave town to never come back again. I've lost business, others have lost business. The situation is totally unfair to Grace, who has music, but we require, and oftentimes have to go remind them, but we require that it be indoors with windows closed. Why haven't we done it here? Okay? It's basically, we don't appreciate why people come here. Some may think they come here for the music. The reality is, those who make a living here, if they haven't realized it yet, people come here because of that harbor. The best thing that could happen to this town is the tide go out to couples and stay there for a week. Then maybe we would realize what we've got. When the big yachts come here, they spend thousands of dollars a day. We're driving them right out of here. I've said my piece.
Helen?
Helen Farnham, Booth Bay Harbor. I used to live on the east side, but now I'm up here on the west side. But my point is, I worked at Rocktide. First time I ever met Melanie and Wells. I was down there listening to a band, which was Jimmy Hanna at that time. And everything was inside. And I know, I worked at Rocktide. I know they have entertainment, but they had it inside. And I don't see any reason why it still can't be inside, like everybody else. Having it outdoors, I agree with Mr. Pierce. Sound does travel over the water. I used to sit home on Bay Street and listen to people at rounds. So I know it travels. And it is irritating for somebody older. I realize that I'm climbing up there myself. But I do know when it's getting really loud, it is deafening. I even give my grandkids heck if they turn the radio up so loud I can't hear anything. So that's my point. Why can't it be put inside, windows closed, if, you know, and because I'm on Scannerland, so I do know that I heard mounds and mounds of call for Rocktide. And I know once in a while, I used to dispatch, I know once in a while years ago, we used to get a call occasionally, you know, like that, and for others downtown, not just Rocktide, but for in the center of town. But I have never, ever heard a lot till now. And believe me, Melanie and Wells would not appreciate that one bit. I love them dearly, and I know they wouldn't. Thank you.
Yes, gentleman in the back.
I'm Tim Sprague, live in Booth Bay Harbor. I'm one of the musicians down at the Booth Bay Lobster War. I heard what Norman said. I don't agree with him. I agree with him in a way. I mean, the people do come here for other things besides music. But every time we play down there, there's more smiling faces down there than you'll see in a lot of places. You take that poor fellow who had his head cut off over there in Iraq. Would they rather see stuff like that, or would they rather have some people smiling and having a good time?
Yes.
I guess my thing is.
Could you identify yourself?
Stand up and
Do I have to stand?
state your name.
My name is Leah Timberlake. I just don't understand why we're even coming here because, I mean, we're talking a couple of hours on a Sunday for music in the sun, outside, when it's nice, and people are having a good time, and yet you want to shove everybody inside, out of the sun, you know, lock up all the doors, be congested if you want to have a good time. I mean, this town has nothing. We have boats, yeah, if you can afford to have a boat. If you can't afford to have a boat, how are you going to enjoy that? You know, what if I want to take my kids down to that deck and listen to a band, you know, during the day? Because, you know, you can't take your kids into the bar when they're young at night. I guess I just don't understand how people can be so, like,
mean?
I mean, I don't even have a word for it, but yeah, rigid, I guess. It's just the fact that it's music. How can anyone not like music? I mean, I don't like every music. I live on Norm Street. I hear the boat cruisers go by. That first thing I think is not, oh my God, this is so annoying. I was like, oh, cool. They're out there. They're having fun. And you know what? I wish I was out there having fun with them. So this is just kind of mind-boggling to me that we're all here debating whether music is bad, good, or indifferent, too loud, for 3 months out of a 12-month year. I mean, that's my opinion. It's 3 months.
Okay, gentleman in the corner of the room.
I'm Gary Blackman, I also play with Timmy Spread at the Boutte Lost War. We had like 17 gigs down there this year, kind of Sunday afternoons and Friday nights, Saturday nights, 6 to 9. We're a band that's amplified. I've been playing music since I was 5 years old. I wonder what Jimmy Dean would say on the Big Bad John if he was over there tied up with Brown Brothers about this situation with the music. Do you think he'd like it, or do you think he wouldn't like it? I know what he'd say. He'd say, this is bogus. It's crazy. Music's life. It's a big part of my life, and a big part of the other people that come out to enjoy it. I've seen, like Timmy said, more people come out on a weekend, sit on that wall, have a beer, laugh, dance, and say, you know, all their cares are gone for that 2 or 3 hours, but they all say, what a great time. You guys are great. We love this place. You know what? You can't take the money out of the people that are helping you. It's revenue and it's bringing money in. Down there at the Kim and Todd's place, we packed that place the other night, and everyone down there had a blast. It was a birthday party for Todd's mom, too. But the thing is, everyone's there to have fun. You know, I'm not 70 years old. I hope I can make it to 70 years old. But it's a point where music makes people smile. And I'll tell you what, there's some money to be made, and if people have more musicians coming into places, then maybe they can leverage more money, because like Kim said, she has to put more people on there when there's a band coming, because there's more people coming down to support her business. Same way with Gray's or Herringbones or Messina, whatever the case might be. When the people know their bands are there, they have people that follow them. When they follow them, they make money. If they didn't make any money, we'd have no businesses in this town, and guess what? This town would be hurting. You know it, I know it. That's all I got to say.
I have a question, Mr. Sullivan. How many more Sundays is the band scheduled to play for? Just one?
Yeah, they end on Sunday.
Okay, did I see some other hands in the room? The gentleman by the door.
I think according to the
Your name,
schedule that I
please?
saw, Tom Perkins, Boutte Harbor. According to the schedule that I saw, it's a couple of Sundays, a Friday night, a Saturday. There's a variety of different things. I think there's going to be ample opportunity for the selectmen to have someone measure the sound from my brother's dock over the next week or 10 days. And as far as I can tell, there's 3 parties here. There's the neighbors who are being imposed upon. There's the town that's trying to enforce a law. And then there's Rocktide, who's causing the problem. And since they're the only ones making money out of this, perhaps they ought to fund whoever measures the sound.
Yes, sir, in the red.
Douglas Gimbel. I'm a musician. I play in town here often on the cruises that end at 9 o'clock and also in some of the nightclubs locally. From Mount Pisgah, a lot of the music I can hear all week is the band concert that's held on the library lawn. And it brings to mind some warm, fuzzy feelings of eras past to hear that type of music waft across the water. And I know the point has been made here that this is the oldest town in the nation. Well, it's not the oldest town, but it evidently is the grayest town in the grayest county in the grayest state in the nation. And the thing about an aging population is that they have certain needs and wants and aesthetics that they like to maintain. But to look toward the future, if you want to talk about business and so forth, the future of business is not with the elderly. The future of business is with younger people. This town suffers a great lack of families and young people and people to do the type of labor that is required by the older portion of the population. So I think music is a universal language. It's crucial to our coming together as a community. It's also imperative for business to continue in this town the way it has. I think there has to be always compromises struck in any scenario like this. I mean, no indifference to the former Emperor of Guam in my statements. I'm certain that he is bothered by the sounds next door, but at some point we have to find a way to tolerate each other's proclivities and to live as a community inclusive of everyone in the community, not just those who we may disagree with. There's quite a few things that irk me that I actually, believe it or not, bite my tongue on, and I'm sure that we all have to learn to do that once in a while. So I think right now what Frank has said about the 80 decibels, if we measure the 80 decibels and it's over, then it's in violation. If it's not, then it's not. And I would like to think that as neighbors we can find a way to get along. It seems to me that the hours that they're performing on the dock at the Rock Tide is substantially earlier than they are at the Lobster dock, and I haven't heard of any. Most of this has been focused on the Rock Tide. I haven't heard much about what's happening on the Lobster dock, but I'm not a big country music fan, but I have to say I totally support the ideas of having country music over there. To me, if people are over there enjoying themselves, having a good time, that is what this is about, and it's important for us to embrace the things that bring people to this town and keep them here. And I would just like to say also that there are many people who don't come back to this town when there is nothing going on as far as entertainment. The hotel rooms, we are having a harder and harder time getting people to this town to spend their monies in the shops, to eat out at the restaurants, and to stay at the hotels. And if we want to have an economy where people can afford to pay their taxes to keep this town running, it's essential that we embrace the evolution of what people are looking for in a vacation destination. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Dorothy Farrell, and I'm relatively new to this community. And I'm just astounded by that we're having this conversation. I personally think music is a happy sound of summer. But, I think lawnmowers are loud, and I would like not to hear lawnmowers. Now, should we measure the decibel for lawnmowers? But you hear the lawnmowers and you're glad when they stop, but this is a sound of summer, and I think music is a sound of summer. I think it's a happy sound, and I'm old. But, and I just think we have to be tolerant.
In 2 months, it'll be leaf blowers.
Yeah.
Everybody can hear me in my house.
Okay. George.
George Fry, Booth Bay Harbor. Our world is about noise, huh? Everywhere we go, there's a new noise, there's another sound. There's every business, or I shouldn't say every business, but many businesses in town and industries create noise and sounds, and we deal with them. As this young lady back here said, music is a happy sound. And if you look at the percentage of the time that they're actually providing music through the course of the whole 365-day year, 24-hour-a-day calculation, it's less than 1/100ths of 1% of the time that they're actually creating music. She says it's just figure out how to deal with it and move on, because it's as much part of some people's lives as I don't know how you consider it a bad thing. And I do like both kinds, country and western.
My name's Matt Page, and I've come to these before. Years ago, at 6 o'clock in the morning, they wanted the lobster fishermen to stop and not even go lobstering at 6 because it was too early to start their boats. Years ago, it was the church, the Catholic Church, and that's one of the most beautiful sounds you'd ever want to hear, that Catholic Church. And it was shut off for a long time. Like somebody said, Jimmy Dean's wife put the money out to hear it. If you've been offshore for 15, 20 days, and that's the first thing you see, it's a sign of safety to turn around and see that church and the sound in which it makes at night. I patronized down there to the Lobster Dog. When I go down, it cost me between It costs me between $30 and $50 to go down there. When I go down, and maybe only have 1 or 2 beers, and usually I have a meal and stuff. And when you look over there, there's 100 people standing there, they're doing the same thing. Some of them aren't as cheap as I am. They're buying lobsters. I sat down there less than a month ago, and one of the biggest yachts I'd seen come to this harbor. The whole crew was over there, into the far side. And they were so happy to turn around and be here, talking to us as natives, seeing how our way of life was and stuff. I think that, you know, for, like you say, the few hours, 3 hours a week that they put them on, or till under 9 o'clock at night, it's gonna be windy here pretty soon, and we're gonna be wishing we'd be sitting down and listening to music.
And then you have the snow plowing, that makes noise.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Chris Gagne, I'm a Blue Bay Harbor resident. I just have a question about what you refer to as numerous complaints. How many those are and how many unique individuals were filing those complaints? That would just be a fact to consider in your, as you go forward.
You know what, I don't have all that data with me, and I don't know if the chief has that either.
We have a count, the anonymous, can you ask the name?
I don't know why I'm so early.
Well, actually, there are times we know the name, there are times we don't. Most of the time. We had a problem at the beginning of the summer and last year where people would call and complain the next day. In other words, the numbers of complaints really don't truly reflect the numbers of complaints we've heard, because when someone calls me and say, last week there was a problem over at, you name it, that's nothing I can do anything about right at that time. So we ask people to call during the problem, regardless of any of these businesses or situations. That's what we ask. Since that time, when we ask people to call, we received 12 separate calls for officers to respond to for rock tide. And there were 3 separate days that we received calls about lobster dock, but there was 3 on one night that you were talking about. And so that's just in regards to those 2 businesses.
Do they call 911, Bob?
Sometimes.
That's not an emergency.
Ones who don't have my cell call.
That's not an emergency, no, Bob, so you should arrest them for calling for bacon.
Yeah. Now we're getting wild.
There's a non-emergency number, isn't there?
There is a non-emergency.
Yes. Perhaps the 911 would be better used for emergency.
Most of the time, I have to say they call the regular business number.
Okay. Yes?
Kim Simmons, owner of Blues Bay Lobster Wharf. I'd just like to say that isn't it nice that we're not talking about us being spoken to about underage drinking, underage people being served. There's no fights at our place. I don't think the only issue we ever had once was an abutting property owner who was drunk. And that was years ago. So, I mean, we have really had no problems at all, other than this one thing. And it's such a short season. And we talked about families coming down, and I would just like to say that the other night we had 4-year-olds dancing with their mom, and it was just, yeah, it's a short season, I'd say. And as far as like the boaters not liking it, they come over, park in front of our dock, and dance on their own boats. So I think that's sort of a mellow point on that as well. So I just like to say that we're proud of the business that we have, and I don't think that we're loud. I just don't. And it's over at 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock, come on. You know, that's what I walk away with saying. It's 9 o'clock. And if we go a little over, then that's the one thing that I would agree with, that if you guys say you've got to be done at 9 o'clock, the wedding rehearsal says you got to be done at 9 o'clock.
Thank you. Link, did you have a comment?
Well, Link's Sample 84 Oak Street, for those that don't know. I live in kind of a unique piece of property, because I can hear everything that goes on in town. You know, whether anybody wants to believe that or not, they can come sit on my porch. So Saturday afternoon, I listen to the ball game. Sunday, I sometimes can hear rock tide. Thursday nights, I can hear the band concert. Let's see. A couple of nights ago, I heard whoever was playing headbanging music somewhere to the eastward of me at 11:30 at night. I very seldom, now granted all those things are further away than they are from Mr. Perkins. There's a lot of times that I could be really, really irritated about the things I hear, but like everybody said, it kind of goes along with life. You got to put up with your neighbors. I know that's kind of hard to believe coming from me, but
You could end right there.
well, yeah.
Note that in the minutes.
Yeah, if I'm gonna do it, I live next door to a motel. 2 weeks ago, they had a raucous party at the motel. 9 o'clock, somebody, Mary Ebb, somebody went out and said, enough, because it was like turning a switch. Week before that, my neighbors had a party, we weren't so fortunate, but those are the kind of things you have to put up with in a small town.
Anytime.
All right, well, one last comment.
35 years ago, I grew up in Falmouth and would move in here, and one of my neighbors said, oh great, you're going to Goose Bay Harbor. You know, it's a wonderful town. I mean, this has had a reputation as being a wonderful summer community that's a lot of fun to be around. And I was so happy to move here, and I've been here. And if you go out and frequent the nightlife, we have so much talent in town, so many musicians, and from the Augusta area to the people living in town, we really have an awesome amount of music that is extremely high caliber. And I think that it's unfortunate that some people are grudging. This is a summer community, that's why we're here, it's always been. And I think, I can't wait until we get into trying to adjust the ordinances. But right now I say, take a decibel meter, they are not expensive equipment, they're very accurate. And until someone does that, I don't think anybody's ever been in violation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have, if you have something new to say, I'm beginning to hear repeated comments.
If you had to add one because they use them on motorcycles.
We do not. There is an old one, I believe, in the code enforcement office that would not be, you would have to purchase more equipment.
I would, Douglas Dumo again, I would just like to offer the Emperor a band to come play on his dock, playing the type of music he would choose at his time and choosing, for no charge.
There you go, Jim.
All right, I think I heard, I heard a couple of suggestions be made by some of you. All right, before I summarize things, one last comment. Ralph, if this is something
Yeah, Ralph
new.
Siegel's Mine Oyster and about out East Trail. The issue is before you, it's a big deal. We have to proceed with our calendars, booking people, and I'm basically held hostage. What do? Do I book these bands? Am I gonna get my special amusement license next year? You know, we go into contracts with these people. A couple $100,000 locally I spend with local musicians. Probably another couple hundred with everybody around, Portland, other places. I think it's a big deal. It's a lot of revenue. My opinion, obviously, because there's applies so much music, is, you know, people love music, people come here for music. But you gotta change the code. I've read the code, I understand the code. But we need to make a decision soon. We need to know, you know, I had a nice talk with Chief Ash about this. And I haven't been able to get an officer to admit it, but for 10 years with the Seagulls, the common rule was 10 o'clock shut the windows. That's what it's always been. That's what I thought the code said. Until last year, when the code was handed me. And I know what it says, and I've read it very well, and I understand it. We need to make some sort of decision soon on how we're going to proceed, because business owners need to know how they have to proceed. We go into binding contracts with musicians. They don't play, because you don't give us their license, we still pay them.
Thank you.
Just a point of, Chief, since I think the issue is we have an ordinance, we haven't appropriately measured if we're in compliance with the ordinance. I think this is the short summary I'm hearing. And if we have an ordinance and that's the standard, then we probably need a piece of equipment in the police department that actually can measure the decibel level so we know if we're in compliance or not. That's kind of a short summary of everything that I've heard tonight.
A couple quick notes on that. It's not what it's cracked up to be with the, I know everybody thinks the decibel meter is the answer, and we will do that. We'll talk to the town manager, and we'll grab a piece of equipment and go with their code enforcement with those things. But I did work in a town 20 years ago where the decibel meters were a big thing. We had bars aiming decibel meters at each other. It's not the answer that we're all looking for. I think sometimes the middle ground, what I simply look for with these things, I talk to the town manager quite often about it, is good directions to give my officers on the way we want this done, and fair to everybody. That's all I pretty much ask for, and I think that we need to look very closely when we do the special amusement permits at what people are asking for and what's around them and those sorts of things. That's what I would ask, simply that, because when we do this, it does take our time, and we want to be fair to everybody that's involved. That's simply my request. Thank you.
At the last meeting, we adopted a revised form as well that requires a diagram of where the outdoor music would be and the distance between there and local abutters and so forth. That in itself, I think, will at least point out these in the future, which I think would be helpful.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Valerie. I just think it's too bad this all has taken place. And back to the lady about the lawnmower, I mean, do we have to mow our lawns at a certain time of day? I mean, we can't make everybody happy. I don't know why we can't just have a good summer and it's gone. It's only, what, 120 days maybe? So, you know?
Yeah, I appreciate your comment. I think the issue here, and I think if I can, I'll speak for myself and ask the other members of the board to chime in. I think ideally what I heard is from some of the members of the audience was that, wouldn't it be nice if we can find some nice compromise here? I think most of us like music. I know myself, I'm involved in a number of different musical groups. Not rock, not country, not amplified, but nevertheless, I'm involved and I appreciate the issues about diversity. But I also appreciate being neighborly and understand that there are issues for resident neighbors and professional neighbors and other business neighbors. So I think it's trying to find a happy balance is, I think, what I see the issue is. So I guess that's, I would ask the board how they feel, if they feel any differently than, or have anything else to add.
No, I think that's a fair summary, and I would ask John if there are things you could think of that would perhaps mitigate the sound, that wouldn't hurt your business, that would still allow you to function. Try them, see if things go better, in the spirit of trying to find a balance that meets everyone.
It certainly can be done. You know, I certainly have talked to the band about, you know, toning it down. But, you know, my feeling is, you know, we've got things like shipyards in town that sandblast all day long. Now, if you live next door to the shipyard and hear sandblasting all day long, that could be considered annoying and it's noise, but yet we live on a harbor, a working harbor. The whole reason people come here is because it is a working harbor, and Rocktide's been there for 46 years and, you know, is a business, has employed countless people over the 46 years and, you know, struggles to stay a business and needs different ways of drawing people in, keeping them entertained. Music is one of those, like so many other people in town know. You know, the reason the reggae cruise goes out on Sunday Night Full is because people love it. You know, it's not because they're being dragged on board.
I've been dragged a couple times.
We've just been dragged off.
So I'm hearing from you, Mr. Sullivan, that there are some things you could do. Are there some things that you are willing to commit to doing?
Well, I think even the choice of music. I mean, I go back to when Lobsterman's Wharf had the ragtime band every Sunday afternoon, and it was about the greatest place in the world to be on a Sunday afternoon. And so I just think that music is, not everyone likes all kinds of music. And unfortunately, we've had the same band every Sunday. I think that's part of the issue for Jim anyway. And I've talked to Jim about that. It's not like, Jim asked me to keep him informed, and I have. I've kept him informed. He knows next Sunday is the last of it, and he knows that I said pray for rain, because when it does rain, you move him indoors. So I could be only as honest and truthful as I can be.
Would you be willing to move them indoors for the rest of the season?
We've got one more week, and, the whole point is, as someone said, is being outside in the sun in the afternoon. People do not want to be indoors. It's the reason Ralph has music at night, primarily, is because people will be inside at night. If he had bands every afternoon, it would whittle down considerably, I think. So we've got a big outside deck, and it's a nice place to have music. Danny has played, 6 nights a week out there. I don't know that anybody's complained about him. But that's a different type of music, slightly amplified. But I'm more than willing. I've booked music for 20 years, and I've booked all different types of music. And in this particular year, we hired one band for every Sunday. We don't anticipate doing that going forward.
Okay, well, let me ask this again, and I guess maybe I'll just be a little bit more specific.
Sure.
Are you willing to talk to the band that plays on Sunday afternoons from 1 to 4 and ask them to play it at a reduced level?
Were there any complaints this Sunday?
Oh, yes, I personally got some. And
This-
I'm
this
pretty
Sunday?
sure I heard from the town that they had them. Yes.
For this Sunday?
Actually, my 28 and 30-year-olds, as they were paddleboarding back from Burnt Island, said they could hear it way out in the harbor. And they like it. They
Well,
frequent
just to
quality
kind of,
establishments.
the last thing I'll
second
say
that
is not
request.
one single person this entire year that has been at our place has asked us to turn down the music. Not one single person has said, this would be great if it was just musical lower. So I tend to think that, I was told that people couldn't hear themselves speak at the lobster dock. If that was true, ears would be bleeding in our deck.
Maybe if you mowed your lawn at the same time the band was playing.
But yes, I of course I will, on Sunday, do my best to make sure that, the band plays at a reasonable level. It is amplified, but there's things that, obviously they don't like the drum and things like that. So some of that is actually, acoustic. If there's not microphones on a drum kit, it's an acoustic instrument at that point.
Yeah.
Mr. Perkins, do you have anything you want to add?
Just a nit, I think if you're gonna do the acoustic measurement, the 80 decibel measurement, you gotta hire somebody who knows what they're doing, and a lot of false information can be construed, just aiming that thing at something. 80 dB, by God. There are those engineering, acoustic engineering companies that exist, Portland, Brunswick, I suspect.
Okay. Do we want to measure the sound?
How do you do that? How, do you have the band play and then the police officer stands there and says, okay, this is what we're measuring you at? I mean, how do you do that?
How many feet do you stand back from the band?
It also
You get an engineering company, they
The property owner.
Yeah,
I don't think
We could do that if we
When it
wanted.
comes back at 70, it still doesn't make the others happy.
Right.
Right.
We're trying to make everybody happy.
I think the chief wants to comment.
Just going to comment, one of the difficulties is if you read the ordinance carefully, it's from the property line. Pretty difficult with some of these, we're kind of going to be aiming around a corner unless you want me to swim, somebody swimming under the dock, or, I mean, it's.
Yeah, I think it is a unique locale.
I know Frank wants to swim under the dock.
Just for you two. All right, Frank, one last comment, or Ralph, excuse me.
I just think it's a waste of time to buy the meter. Where you measure, it's gonna be a discussion anyway. It's not gonna solve anything. I can have my windows and doors shut, go to the end of the dock, I can't hear the music. I get a call from this guy, I go up on the top of the mountain, this call, I can hear people talking on the deck. So where do you measure? So I think it's a waste of time. We've got to come up with a conclusion other than wasting their time going around with a gun, reading it. I mean, I know it's an ordinance thing and we gotta deal with it later, but I think buying with city money something that's basically gonna be useless, it's gonna say, yep, fine, it's good here. And then this gentleman over here with the harbor in between, it's gonna be twice as loud over there. So where do you measure to make everybody happy? The line, where's the line? Does that be it? How does that help him?
According to the ordinance, we're set the line.
So we
That
should
is a
probably
good point
measure.
though, because some nights I get very.
But we're dealing with the ordinance as it exists today, so, okay.
Adjustable meter is like $70, a good one, it's like $70.
So. Comments from the other members of the board?
I like your suggestion. I got an app on my iPhone.
Quiet in the audience, please.
I like your suggestion, Denise. You asked Mr. Sullivan to ask the band to turn it down a little bit. I think we can do that.
Denise,
JD?
I tell you, I've sat here and listened to this, and I love music. I was a drum major of the band for 9 years, the alumni band, and, you know, I just, you know, we're talking about this, we're trying to please everybody, and I think it's got out of hand a little bit, I think. And we'll do the best we can, but we do have an ordinance that you have to comply. And I think it's ridiculous to have a meter. I don't think that's gonna work. I'm a safety engineer, I work with those meters and know all about them. And to get a good reading, you're gonna have to really, you know, on the line and stuff like that, and I think it's a waste of chief's time to do that. And we're gonna have to deal with, I just love music, I tell you that right now, and I think it's really hard here to see people upset about music. Music, you're right, everybody, music is enjoyment. And people come to Blueberry Harbor, and I've been down to Camden, Maine, I've been to Rockport, I've been to Bangor, I've been to all these towns, and I asked all the selectmen, and they don't have any problem like we do. I'll tell you that right now. So I'm just telling you, I've done a lot of research on this, and I don't know, you know, we have a very short summer here, and we have to do what we got. And that's what I'm saying, very short summer. You're right, 120 days to make the bucks.
Is that long?
Maybe not that long, I don't know, guys, but I'm just saying that, I'm not all in favor of going out and buying a meter and all that stuff and try to meter something. I know it's in the standards, and I know I dealt it when I was a safety engineer, but I just think it's a waste of time. We got an ordinance, we can, you know, go inside, or there is things that you can buy, you know. There's curtains and things that you can buy, noise resistant stuff, that the business can buy that really reduces the noise. I don't know if you know that or not, but there's all kinds of things out there that will make it better. I'm just trying to make it better instead of doing this, anyway, so that's my comment.
Any other thoughts?
Well, I'll say one last thing, that I agree the measurement is imperfect, but I think the discussion tonight is illustrative that there will be always a balance between entertainment and trying to do what's reasonable and people's request to enjoy entertainment, but also enjoy their residence without excessive noise. We live in a tourist town, so whether we want to measure decibels or not, and whether it's an imperfect science or not, we will have to pay attention as we look at the ordinances of how will we strike the right balance so that we can encourage business and allow them to make commitments, but also respect the rights of residents and others who live in that area, because it's obvious it's an issue that is controversial. So whether we like noise meters or not, that may be the only technology we have to allow the chief some guidance of what to do, other than trying to pick and choose who he responds to. So I think the onus is on us to look at the ordinance and try and come up with something that strikes the right balance, with some objectivity that allows the chief to take action without having to just kind of pick it out of the air whether he acts or not.
I guess I would second JD's assessment. I have a doctorate from MIT in underwater acoustics. I worked for 27 years for one of the preeminent acoustical companies on the East Coast, both Brannick and Newman. And we branched into doing noise monitoring for airports and others. And we would charge somewhere between $50,000 to $75,000 to make an accurate assessment of an airport's noise impact. We're not going to go there. We need to balance. And the data can be a guideline, but it won't be a touchstone. And I think the balanced approach is the right way to deal with this.
So I think to summarize then, what I heard is that, Mr. Sullivan, you'll try to tone things down for next Sunday's performance.
Correct.
Okay, we appreciate that. I heard that there may be some interest in looking at the ordinances. However, I want to say that, or remind people that revising ordinances is a lengthy process. It's complicated, it's hard to get all the wording, and even if we did, they have to go to a town vote, normally at a town meeting, which is in early May. The reason I'm saying this, Ralph, because you brought up the issue of contracts in advance, I kind of find it unlikely that there'll be a change in the ordinances before then, or at least in time for you to plan for next summer. I could be wrong, but I think what I'm saying is
I'm just
probably
worried about
accurate.
getting the permit from the town. That's where my point is. A special amusement license, you know, if it's, you know, that's where I feel handcuffed, whether we're gonna be approved or not. I mean, there's a lot of discussion.
We'll be at that meeting too.
I understand. And I go back to what I think, what I heard the majority of the people here say at the table is that we're really looking for, hopefully for taxpayers, residents, and businesses to come to a compromise, so a neighborly and amicable solution. Leah?
Would there be a way of them being able to get their permit like at the end of the season, before the next season, instead of waiting until May to have to see if they get their license?
I don't know the answer to that question.
They all renew in May.
They renew in May, so unfortunately not. All right. I think we've come to the end of that, the discussion here.
I move we approve the Public Works truck bid.
I second that.
All right, and I moved on to the next item.
Thank you, Link.
I just didn't want you to get up.
Appreciate that.
Any discussion on the Public Works?
Second.
I've already seconded.
Any discussion?
No.
Hey, Norm,
How much was it?
we're
Who
on
made
the
it?
second oldest town.
20,521.66 is from Goodwin Chevrolet.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, motion approved.
Tom, can you say that number again? I can't hear.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's quiet down.
These items were budgeted for in the past few budget cycles. I think the next item on the agenda is to approve the police cruiser bid, which was in the amount of,
That's the amount of $26,161, and it's Wisconsin Ford.
do I have a motion?
Move that we.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to public forum. George?
Well, this is a great segue for this.
Do you
I
mind
came in
identifying
earlier.
yourself again?
I'm George Frank, sorry,
Thank
BK Robert. And I hate to say it, Denise, but we can't hear you in the back of the room at the beginning of the meeting when there's folks in the room. So all this talk about amplification, it would be wonderful if the Board of Selectmen would look into amplifying their voices throughout this meeting. Because I was sitting in the back, I couldn't hear you when you were talking about the tennis courts, of all things. And
Did you miss the tennis courts?
I know.
There's all these seats up front that aren't taken.
No, it was full earlier, and I didn't want to walk in front of the camera.
There's the real reason.
Yeah, right.
There's the rub.
But really, you can't hear you guys, and I know you work hard to do a great job, but it would be nice if we could somehow.
Okay, that's a
Hear you
good
better.
idea. We'll,
And the other thing is
We'll,
about those
have
tennis
Tom look
courts
into that.
and basketball courts. You won't hear me say this very often, but I disagree with you on minimizing the design to just one to save money. You only have one shot at it. You may as well spend the money in front on the engineering to look to see what might be the best, because you're only gonna get one idea if you pay for one. And there may be the three that she had talked about at the fee that you had talked of. Maybe from those three, you could make one, and, you know, because, just don't limit yourself to somebody else's single idea.
No.
I know, but we couldn't hear you earlier to make that point
I
earlier,
understand.
Denise.
We've gone round and round
I know you have.
on the issue with this. I think we've just kind of
And-
come to a decision. But we all know that there's lots and lots of field area that could be developed behind the schools at some point in time.
Right, but we're not talking for the school, and we know that we're never gonna get any approval from the schools, given that the booth-based share of the school budget is limiting everything they do there. So, when you talk about doing it at the school, you have to bring them into the fold, and that's just not gonna happen. So, there is a shortage of field space currently, and recreational field space. And I read in the paper where they had said, there was talk of a Veterans Memorial Park, and that's a great idea, but it may not be the best location when you already have developed that into a athletic recreational area, not a memorial type area. So, and to further on the other amplification, along with the amplification, if we had PowerPoint and a screen, the plans that you've all seen, that we could have brought it up and on a screen and everybody could see.
Good idea.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, good, yeah.
You're right. That would be nice. I
don't
agree
do
with
that
you.
very often.
Oh. Okay, Palmer, did you have a comment?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned 9/11, and I hope I know where all of you are going to be at 7:30 on 9/11 p.m. You're going to be in Wisconsin by state law, I hope, for the formation of the Budget Advisory Committee for the county. If you read your tax bill, you'll find that nearly 14% of our town budget goes for the county. State law provides that a caucus be held, and I have a copy of the ordinance here you might want to look at. Basically, the selectmen of all the towns in the county are required by law to be there for this caucus. Hope Bay Harbor has been notably absent in recent years. Other towns have not. And eventually, it's a strange process, but you'll vote on one member for each district. You know how many districts there are? 3. Each commissioner represents one district. Our district comprises Booth Bay Harbor, Booth Bay, Southport, Edgecombe, Westport, and Wiscasset. And from that, you hope to get one member. Plus, there's one more, a 4th member, who comes from the state's legislative delegation. And I'm not sure with the latest realignment, every 10 years we realign the legislature. I believe we have probably 2 senators that represent parts of Lincoln County and parts of Kennebec, and maybe even Knox. Probably have at least 4 legislators. So it isn't just our legislative district, it's the county. Many things happen that you will learn a great deal about if you happen to be on the budget committee or go to one. For example, you know that we have an annual assessment for our refuse disposal district, which works well. You know we're also paying for another one that's run by the county for, I believe, 4 small towns. But they only pay a part of it. All 16 towns pay for that district, which probably the county shouldn't even be running. That's one thing. You know, the commissioners of the district, you know they get lifetime medical benefits for life. These are things that the budget committee can at least learn about and find out where all of the money is going.
Thank you, Palmer.
Tom, could you make sure that's shared with all of us electronically?
What the...
The announcement?
Actually,
Yeah.
Denise got the certified
Well,
letter
okay.
today, and
Oh, okay.
both of us got it today.
Haven't
so-
had a chance to open it yet,
Okay.
so we'll, you can look at it now, or I can scan it and email it to you.
Yeah, I'd rather have a copy of it.
That's fine,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
You can spend a lot of time up there, but you can learn a lot, even if you don't get appointed. And I happened to wind up in that position in 1999, and I learned a lot in the course of those hearings.
Thank you, Palmer. Any other comments from the public? I don't think we need an executive session tonight.
No, tonight.
No, but I'm quite certain we'll have one next week. Unless you have something, Tom?
Next meeting? No.
No, okay. Can we have a motion to approve the warrants?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
This is not debatable. All in
No.
favor?
But